Thank you. Let's try that again. Good afternoon. Welcome to the YMCA training this afternoon. We're looking at the power of noticing. My name is Becky Dawson and I am delivering the training. The YMCA is a registered charity and therefore training with us also serves to provide support to young people in the wider community. And our passion is helping young people achieve their potential by empowering those who work with them. By attending our training or commissioning our mental health services, you and your organisations, if that's feasible, is help support and protect projects and services. So just some basic guidelines. If you can turn off mobile phones if you're not muted, being respectful of other participants. Any information shared will be kept confidential, although this is a webinar, so it will just be me speaking to you. The workshop shouldn't raise too many difficult themes today, but if there is anything that you find difficult, please do take a moment for yourself. If I give any examples, I'll be anonymizing those, and we won't have a Q&A section at the end of this training today. But if you do have any questions, you will be able to email them on afterwards, and we can definitely support you with that. So the objectives of today's session are to be able to understand what noticing means, to be able to identify the challenges we might face to being present, and being present is a key part of noticing, and to develop strategies to be more present and use the power of noticing. And that's what we're really focusing on this afternoon. So I'll invite you to think about what on a daily basis might be going through your mind. What sort of things are you thinking about? I think it's an average of 60,000 thoughts we have in a day. That is a huge number. I haven't done the maths to work out what that is per minute, but it's a lot. And those things are going on constantly. And I just put some examples together, and you may have other things. Work, family, close family, wider family, anyone that you are related to, the things that might be going on with families. Staying healthy. So generally, particularly now I'm kind of over nearer 50 than I used to be, and thinking about what I need to do to keep healthy and keep fit. Finances. We are living in a really challenging time for many people around finances. But also finances might be pensions, it might be insurance, kind of putting things in place that we might need moving forward to look after ourselves. Our general health, that could be physical health, and our mental health. Housework, the bane of my life, but yet still on my mind as I walk through the house, all those jobs that I haven't done, and the bills. Now, those are just a few things that might be on your mind. And you may be thinking, gosh, you haven't included caring for elderly parents there, or problems with teenagers, all of the other things that might be coming on and going through our minds. And that constant kind of barrage of things that we need to think about and worry about can really be a huge barrier to stopping us from noticing. And we'll talk a little bit more in a moment about what do I actually mean by noticing and why it's so important. So noticing and being present can be so key, because when we don't find those moments to notice, to be present, it can lead to challenges to our well-being. So it can mean that we experience anxiety and stress. Just listed a lot of things that can really be a cause for those. Overwhelm, when we just feel like there is too much going on and we're not able to cope. Burnout, maybe we're in a particularly stressful job, maybe we are working in a way that means that we are emotionally drained and have nothing left at the end of the day, week, month. It can really strain our relationships if we continue down that path and don't think about what we can do to take another step towards noticing, to being mindful, to being more aware of what's going on for us. And it can absolutely lead us to feeling out of control and just kind of falling from one day to the next, and not really feeling able to focus on what we want to focus on. and that we know will make us feel better in that long run. And all of those things can lead to physical illness. And in the same way, experiencing physical illness can lead to those things if we aren't able to find the time to look after ourselves in the way that we're going to talk about this afternoon. So what do I mean by noticing? So noticing refers to the act of consciously and intentionally observing. So being conscious of what is going on around us, our surroundings, what we're thinking, what we're feeling. Quite often, we can just do it. We can just live it, and we can just feel the feelings and do the experiences. We don't necessarily do so consciously. What we're thinking about when we're talking about noticing is really paying attention to the present moment, being in the present moment, not judging it, not deciding whether it's a good or a bad thing, just being in it. And I kind of challenge you to think about the last time that you were just in the present moment, not, and particularly this time of year, not thinking about your to-do list of the things that you need to do, not thinking about the things that might not have gone well in the last couple of days at home or at work. When was the last time that you were just sitting in the present moment? And as it says there, having a heightened state of mindfulness or awareness. And we're going to think in the first instance about mindfulness. And mindfulness can be seen as a bit of a buzzword, can't it? And people can see it as just being a kind of a hippie thing, sitting on a cross-legged on a cushion and humming. But there's a lot more to mindfulness, and there's a lot more opportunities. I'm just going to show a quick video to get us thinking. She says,
just as exercise helps us take care of our bodies, mindfulness is a skill that keeps our minds healthy. Mindfulness helps us perform at our best and better navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life. Mindfulness is noticing and being curious about what's happening right now. It's the opposite of being on autopilot, when our bodies are doing one thing and our minds are somewhere else, often thinking about the past or worrying about the future. When we're mindful, we engage our senses deliberately, and we really take in the things that we can see, smell, hear, taste, and touch. Just as we can build our muscles by going to the gym, we can build our mindfulness muscle through regular practice, known as meditation. All it takes is a few minutes a day to see the benefits. So find the time. Your mind will thank you for it.
so we're going to talk a little bit about meditation, but first things I want you to think about are some of the very easy things that we can do if we want to practice being mindful. And as that video highlighted, our five senses are our friend in this situation. And my background experience is working with young people, and I will quite often support them to use grounding techniques that are based on the five senses. So, you know, we know what they all are, and they're an easy step through. So what is mindful being? A mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensation. And it is used as a therapeutic technique. Now, it's important to know that you can do courses and spend a lot of time learning about mindfulness and get a huge amount out of it. But you can also do some little things, which I'm going to talk about. And I do these with young people that I work with. So that's why I'm going to share them with you today. There's three simple things we can do to be mindful. So this is a meditation. It's about being mindful. It's about taking a moment to stop and explore what we are doing. So first one is mindful eating. I tend to do this with young people with maybe sweets or crisps. You can do it with anything really. And mindful eating is about slowing down that everyday process of eating. I think for me, sometimes eating is the thing I rush through most. You know, I kind of get it down my neck and then get on to the next thing. And actually, it can be a really good opportunity to just stop and slow down. So we use the senses. We look at the sweet that we have in our hand, and we notice what it looks like and the shades of the color, and how it appears in our hands. And then we might smell it before we eat it and think about what does it really smell like and how does it feel in our hand and what's the texture and how does that texture change when the sweet's in our mouth, and really taking the time to taste it, to move it around in the mouth, to kind of move it over our taste buds. And taking your time with that food can really slow things down. It can actually be a really good way to improve our relationship with food as well, because quite often we will eat, and not be mindful of whether we are hungry or whether we need any more food. But bringing this into, sitting and eating dinner and taking more time can really help our attitude towards food as well. The next one is walking. Thinking about a journey that you do regularly. I work at a school on a Friday and I walk into town, and there have been occasions where I've kind of gone from my house to school and thought, oh, I don't really remember how I got here because I'm just on autopilot. And what you can do, and what I'd invite you to try, is thinking about being mindful on that walk and using those five senses again to explore what that journey feels like. So looking around you as you're walking and seeing things that you've not seen before, really looking at the trees you're walking past, or the walls, or the cars, or anything really that you are going past, and really kind of looking at the details of it. What can you hear? What are the sounds? Really tuning into the things around you. What can you smell? Maybe you're walking past a restaurant, maybe you're walking past a cafe. How does the floor feel on your feet as you are walking? What do your steps feel like? And so taking those five senses, and what can happen is sometimes, particularly if you're walking back from work or you're trying to get lots done, maybe you're out doing your Christmas shopping, your brain can be just so full of all the different things. And if we just stop and focus on what we can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, it gives our brains an opportunity to pause, because we're focusing on these things and we're not stuck in our heads thinking about the things that might be stressing us out. And so it could be a really nice way to wind down if we're trying to go to somewhere else. It might be that on Christmas Day you need to go out for a mindful walk in order to kind of escape or get away from the challenges that might be facing at home. And then the final one is a body scan. And the great thing about a body scan is it can be done anywhere at any time. I particularly use this with young people as a grounding technique if they are feeling overwhelmed. But as I'm going to say later, with any of these things, it's really important that we are doing them regularly and not just when we might be struggling, because we're much more effective if we practice. If you imagined I said to you, I'm going to run a marathon and I want you to go and do it tomorrow, unless you're very highly trained, you might be a bit shocked by that and feel not very prepared. And this is exactly the same. If we can practice these things regularly, it can make a difference to us being able to do them when we need them. So we're looking at our toolkit and how to build that toolkit. So a body scan can be done anywhere. You can be standing, you can be sitting, however you want to do it. And it's about noticing how each part of your body feels. So, as an example, you slowly bring attention to your feet. You observe how your feet feel, really focus on what you can feel in your toes and the bottom of your feet. You might wriggle your toes a little bit. How do your toes feel against your socks or your shoes? You're not making any judgment. It's not whether they feel good or bad. It's just how do they feel. And then you might think about how you're slowing down your breathing when you're doing this. You might imagine sending your breath down to your feet as if the breath is traveling all the way through your body and then back up again. You might not feel anything at all, and that is fine too. It's just allowing yourself to feel the sensation of not feeling anything at all. And you essentially do that through your feet, through your shins, through your knees, through your calves, through all of your body, all the way up to the top. And as with all of these things, there are lots of different scripts that you can find online that can help you do that, or if you're helping someone else do it, there are lots of them. But essentially with the body scan, you're just kind of going through your body and feeling and focusing your attention on a part of your body and thinking, how does it feel? What does it feel like? So those are three really easy ways to be mindful. So that's not necessarily mindfulness. It's about how can I add these things into my daily practice that can help me. And we'll talk a little bit later about why it's important to to be able to do it as part of your day to day. We can't all go off onto mindfulness retreats for 3 days. That's just not realistic. So how can we add this in to help ourselves? So the next step really is thinking about a mindful practice, and how do we bring in meditation to our daily practice. And that can happen from anything from taking 2 to 10 minutes a day, simply sitting quietly with your thoughts. Now, mindfulness doesn't eliminate stress or other difficulties. It doesn't take them away. Instead, what it does is allow you to become more aware of unpleasant thoughts and emotions that arise because of challenging situations. And then we have more choice about how we handle them in the moment. And that's what we're hoping to aim for with mindfulness and with noticing. It's not necessarily about taking away things that are challenging. It's about noticing them, knowing what our reaction is to them, and maybe adapting that reaction into a way that is more positive for us. And hopefully a better chance of reacting calmly and empathetically when we're faced with stresses or challenges. And so what we can do is just simply sit quietly, and meditation allows us to move from high frequency brain waves to lower frequency, which can activate and sometimes deactivate certain areas of the brain. For example, it can decrease neurological connections to the medial frontal cortex, or the me center, which can reduce traits of fear, stress, and anxiety. And in turn, something like meditation can also build up new pathways to the parts of the brain responsible for traits like focus and decision making. I mean, it's most basic. Mindfulness meditation is about creating a space to just sit and clear your mind, allowing thoughts to just float by, acknowledging that they're there, but not allowing yourself to focus on them, but also not beating yourself up if you do for that brief moment. It can take a while to do this, and it can feel uncomfortable initially. So it's really important to listen to yourself when you're doing this. It's essential to be aware that people that have experienced trauma may find mindfulness really challenging. Sitting in silence can be triggering. So I would always suggest making sure that people feel comfortable with doing something like this. It's not something we should be forcing on anyone. We take it step by step and see how it goes. I'll just put some examples of where you can find some free or pretty much free access to these sorts of things. So Spotify, even on the free version, you can get some great mindfulness playlists on there. Headspace is free to some degree. You can do the basics on there with the Calm app. But also Ruby Wax has got a great book, which is only a few pounds, called A Mindfulness Guide for Survival. And she's got a really, as you can imagine from Ruby Wax, a no-nonsense approach to how we can include mindfulness in our everyday life. So that's mindfulness. And what I want to think about next is this idea of finding productivity. So one of the things around noticing is that when we are overwhelmed, when we aren't in the moment, we can become less productive. And I certainly know I can. If I've got too many things going on in my mind, it means I can achieve very little. William James wrote in his Principles of Psychology book, my experience is what I agree to attend to. And what he's essentially saying is, I need to take some control of what I'm noticing, what I'm doing, what I'm taking in order to ensure that I am in control of that, not allowing it to happen to me. And I would certainly say in this day and age of technology, we can absolutely get taken over by the things around us. I know that I am terrible with my phone, and I do get completely absorbed in it, and don't, time flies by and I don't realize the impact that it's having on me. And so, thinking about how can we take control of some of these situations. So what can we control? So technology is one thing. Remember that I'm not saying technology is bad. Absolutely, technology has lots of advantages. It does a huge amount for us. And it can really be a connection for many people. But it is about how we control it and being in control of it. And technology can be one of the biggest barriers to noticing. So thinking about how we can make it serve us. So thinking about our push notifications, how do we control our push notifications for the ones that we really need or want? Maybe not having our work email on our phones can be really important. I know certainly when I was a teacher, that was a real challenge for me. So if you haven't got the push notifications on your phone, then you're less likely to be checking it all the time. If you quieten down those WhatsApp groups or those Facebook Messenger groups, so they're muted, so you don't see it pinging up every time someone messages on there, you are more able to spend longer stretches focusing on the things that you want to focus on. That might be work, that might be hobbies or activities, whatever it is that you're choosing. When we're thinking about the power of noticing, it's about how can we control the things around us to enable us to do that more effectively. As often as possible, let's have our phones on silent and out of sight so that we aren't tempted to be checking every 5 minutes of what is going on. So the next is thinking about controlling our environment. And if we really want to focus and be in the moment, it's thinking about what can we do to do that. So it might be, for some people, putting on headphones works best for that. Maybe moving to a quieter space, actually physically telling people, I need some space, I need to work quietly, I need to focus, I'm going to take some time out. And physically moving away from people. Not always easy, I know, if you're a parent or you're working in a busy office, it can be challenging to do that. But thinking about how we can do that, maybe it is about going out for a walk on your lunch break rather than sitting at your desk, but thinking about what that looks like and how you can control your environment. And then thinking about how you can control your behavior. So we are so used to, in this day and age, doing multitasking, and multitasking is held up as this brilliant thing, this thing that we all should be doing and that we should all be considering all the time. If we're not multitasking, then we are failing. But actually, I'd invite you to think about and explore what are the benefits of not multitasking. So what are the benefits of focusing on one thing at a time? What are the benefits of taking a regular break when we are doing a project or working on something, focusing? And what are the benefits of unplugging regularly and not being available constantly for anyone? I mean, the thought now for many of us of not having a mobile phone is a bit of an anathema. For not being able to phone someone or contact someone or text someone seems to be completely bizarre for many of us. But it wasn't that long ago, when I was a child, that you had to be at home in your house at the right time if someone was going to phone you, for you to be able to speak to them. And or you would have to find a payphone or something like that. And in many ways technology is brilliant, but it has meant that we are constantly on, that we are constantly being contactable, and that stops us being able to be in the moment often because we don't control it, because anyone can be there speaking to us and trying to contact us. And there is a huge guilt now, isn't there, that if we aren't contactable, if people don't feel able to speak to us instantly, then quite often if my mobile phone rings, I don't know the number, I won't pick it up, but I do get a sense of guilt or shame when I'm not answering that phone, even though it's intruding on whatever time or whatever it is I'm doing at that time. And then finally, controlling your thoughts. So how can we think about less? How can we not try and overthink? I'm putting my hand up here now and say I'm a massive overthinker, and it is a challenge for me. But what can we do to try and control those thoughts, and how can we escape from that sense of overwhelm when we have too many things going on for us at a time? And there's a few different things we can do really helpfully. That can be journaling. So journaling is a really good way of taking control of what thoughts we hold on to and what thoughts we let go. So just getting those things written down. And once we write them down, we start to notice, and that's the key word for this afternoon. We start to notice, oh, why am I worrying about this? Why am I spending time on this? I do an activity with young people around a stress bucket, and we talk about what fills up our stress bucket during the day. I actually do it with teaching staff as well. And quite often what happens is, once people have written out all of the things that are maybe affecting them and bothering them, once they're written out in front of them, sometimes they can go, well, actually, that isn't such a big deal. I'm not too worried about that. Or now that I see that written down, I realize that I'm worrying too much about that. And so journaling can be a really beneficial way of controlling our thoughts and helping us to feel more comfortable in the situation we are. And another approach is reframing. So controlling our thoughts and controlling the impact those thoughts have on us. So when we talk about noticing, when it comes to our thoughts, is noticing, what impact is this thought having on me? Why am I having this negative thought process from this? Why am I feeling this way? What are those feelings? What are those feelings telling me? And trying to reframe, thinking about why maybe we're feeling overwhelmed or panicked. What is it about these thoughts? Do I have any evidence for these thoughts? Because quite often we are panicking without reason because we are worried about what other people might think. So how can I reframe what I'm thinking and ensure that I am feeling confident and comfortable moving forward? And again, as with any of the things that I talk about this afternoon, this all takes practice. No one is going to walk away from this session this afternoon and suddenly put all of these things in place and feel completely in control, because that's just not human nature. But what we will talk about at the end of the session is, what are the little steps that we can take to make those things happen. Okay. So another really good approach to noticing, but also to allowing your brain to take a break, is finding our flow state. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, practice saying that name, was the first to identify and research the phenomenon of flow. Okay, so coming into a flow state. And basically what it means is, when you're absorbed in an activity, you really are engaged with it, you're really enjoying, and that holds your attention. That might be cooking, it might be ironing. I wish it was ironing for me, sadly not. It might be colouring, it might be reading, it might be doing a jigsaw, puzzles, gardening, drawing. There are all sorts of different things, and everyone is different. Everyone's flow state is different. So we are going to think a bit about that flow state. When we're doing nothing, something called the default mode network takes over. It's the part of the brain that's associated with daydreaming, but it also plays an important neurological role. And our levels of activity are significantly higher when we're in that DMN, even though we don't look like we are doing much at all. And counterintuitively, this part of the brain is also active during flow when we aren't actually doing very much. So an example might be, when I'm really struggling with something at work and I can't get my head around it, sometimes I need to walk away, literally go for a walk, and I can suddenly think more clearly about the thing I'm doing when I'm just in my flow state of walking the dogs, for example. Things can become much clearer than they would be if I'm sitting at the screen trying to work those things out. So we're going to think about how we know we are in flow, and therefore it might help us to think about what flow might be for us. And that would be a really kind of interesting takeaway for you to consider. What do I do that gets me into that flow state? So first things first, if we're in flow, then we've got attentional focus. So whatever we are working on has our complete attention. Not thinking about anything else, not thinking about what we're having for dinner, we're not checking our phones. Someone, if it wants to speak to us, would have to come and interrupt us, or get our attention somehow. So we're really in that attentional focus. But we have to have enough challenge in the activity. It has to be, can't be too easy, and it can't be too hard either. If it's too easy, then we'll get bored, it won't be absorbing enough. And if it's too challenging, we just won't be able to get into it. It'll just go to the side. So it has to have that right balance of challenge. As humans, we are quite goal oriented. Okay. So to get that flow happening, the activity has to have a point to it. It doesn't have to be like the meaning of life point. It could just be a video game or colouring a picture. But in order to direct your attention, you have to have something to direct your attention to. So there needs to be an outcome to it. So there needs to be a drawing that has been coloured at the end of it, or a level that has been gained in a game. What can also happen in flow is we need feedback. There's a give and take of energy in the activity. You know, hands up if you've ever spent hours playing Candy Crush. I know I have. One of the reasons Candy Crush gets us, because it gets us into this flow state. It's not too easy, not too challenging, and every so often the game will give us a little thing to tell us that we've earned something at stage, and that gives us a buzz and keeps us playing. But we can also get that from any of those other things that we've talked about, finding the right piece of a jigsaw puzzle that goes into a spot you've been trying to fill for ages, scoring a point in a game that we're playing, anything like that. We have to have personal control in order to find flow. We'll find it's hard. You're not going to find flow watching someone else doing something, because we don't have personal control in it. We need to feel like we can impact on the thing that is happening in front of us. You know, it's really difficult to be mentally absorbed in something that someone else is doing, and that's less a flow state. Timelessness. So when you're in flow, you are lost in that activity. You have no sense. And you know, when we see young people playing video games, and so that's, I don't play video games anymore, you know, they can, you know, if you let them, they could play them for hours, couldn't they? They are in a flow state. They are focused on what they're doing. It can also alter our consciousness. You know, we can feel like time has gone by really quickly, or time has gone really slowly. But either way, you look at the clock and you're like, wow, how did that happen so quickly? And that timelessness is really key. Peace. You know, in a flow state, we have a feeling of calm. Okay, absorbed in the task, but we're not worried about it. We're not stressed. It's not going to be a challenge if we don't get it done. It's just if you don't feel self-conscious, you're just enjoying it. Particular characteristics last beyond what we're actually doing. So the flow state can affect our cortisol and stress levels as we move forward. There is an intrinsic motivation. It has to be rewarding for its own sake. So it can't be rewarding just because someone else says it is. For example, if you enjoy swimming, you can be in the flow whether you're competing, exercising, or just splashing in the pool. So it's not, there can be an intrinsic motivation there. The results are secondary to the task itself. And we can disconnect from our physical needs. We might forget to drink. We might forget to eat. We might forget to go to the toilet. And we've kind of lost that consciousness of what we would normally feel when we are doing any other activity. And then finally, we're in that real single-mindedness. We're really focused on that one activity. We can't multitask when we're in a flow state. If we're multitasking, then we're not in a flow state. In order to get into the right state of mind, we give all of our attention to the task at hand. You know, you're not in a flow state if you're doing the task and answering emails and speaking to someone else. That isn't a flow state. So I would just invite you now to have a think about what you do or what you enjoy that gets you into your flow state. And remember that it can be different for everyone. Different people will have different flow states. And how often do you actually do that? How often do you allow yourself to get into that flow state? Again, as I'll say with all of the things we talk about today, it is a practice. It's not about doing it when everything has become too much. It's about doing it regularly and training your brain to be in that state. And then it will be easier to get into that state when you need to. So it is about doing it on a daily or on a weekly or finding your time. It's like having a toolbox of things that you might need and sharpening those tools regularly. So going into that flow state regularly, not waiting until you're overwhelmed, near to burnout, and thinking, oh, I need to do something that'll get me into my flow state. Much more difficult to get into a flow state when you're at that stage. But if it's something that you do regularly, it's something that you know works for you, then I do this quite a lot with young people. When I start working with them, we'll identify things that I know that they find calming, that they find helpful. Some of them it's about putting their headphones in and just putting music on. For some of them it is about drawing, colouring. There's all sorts of different things, but we practice it. We do it daily so that it's not a case of them trying to pick it up when they are struggling. It's a case of them having that way. Oh, on my screen there, sorry. It's a case of having that way to I don't know what's happening with my slides, apologies, to be able to tap into it. So before my slides start to go completely off the wall, the next practice we are going to talk about is something called a gratitude practice. And this might sound a little bit strange, but I'm going to explain why this is important. So a gratitude practice involves regularly focusing and appreciating on positive aspects of life. And it can be a really game-changing experience on helping us. So noticing is fine, but we've got to be noticing the right things. And if we're always noticing the negative things, then that can be difficult. It is human nature to focus on the negative. Our brains have been hardwired through evolution to focus on that negative. It goes back to prehistoric days when primitive people had to be able to register threats to avoid danger and increase survival rates. And so individuals who were more attuned to danger and that negative stimuli stayed alive longer and passed on their genes. And so it has become, much easier for humans to focus on the negative. As humans, we tend to remember traumatic experiences better than positive ones, recall insults better than praise. And I'm sure you can all think of examples of that in work or in life. When I could probably give you lots of examples where people said things that they thought my work wasn't good enough, maybe, but can I remember the times when people said positive things about me? We might react more strongly to negative stimuli, and we might think about negative things more frequently than positive ones, and react more strongly to negative events than to equally positive events. So it is human nature, but just like anything, just like training for a marathon, as I've highlighted earlier, we can try to retrain our brains. And this can be a really important thing. So we're talking about noticing, we're talking about focusing on that. Now we're really thinking about noticing the positive. How do we focus on the things that we need to focus on? So why gratitude? Why is a gratitude practice so important? I'm just going to go through some of the things here that we've outlined. So focusing on the positive shifts our focus to the positive. So the more that we are aware of positives, and the more that we practice gratitude, the more likely we are to notice those positive things. It heightens awareness. By regularly expressing gratitude, you become more aware of the positive moments, no matter how small they are. It allows us to appreciate positive details that maybe previously would have gone unnoticed. It links in with that mindfulness that we've talked about. It can help us to be more present in the moment and appreciate current circumstances. This mindfulness encourages you to pay attention to the details of your experiences and surroundings. If we're looking for those positives, then it's much better for us. We talked a little bit about the brain and how it works today, and actually focusing on the positive and having a gratitude practice can strengthen positive neural pathways in the same way that prehistoric man strengthened those negative neural pathways in order to keep him alive and keep him safe. We can do the same by strengthening those positive neural pathways. And it can mean that we are much more likely to notice those positive things. And we know, and there is a lot of research out there that says regular gratitude practices are linked to improved and overall better mood and emotional well-being. When you feel good, you're more likely to notice and appreciate positive things in your life. And we can cultivate optimism. Helps us to become more optimistic, to not assume that everything is going to be terrible and everything's going to go wrong, to help us to have a growth mindset, an optimistic mindset, which allows us to have a positive perspective, maybe look for more solutions and notice opportunities more readily. It promotes resilience, and resilience is a very overused word, but there is a huge amount of research around the importance of focusing on gratitude and positivity in order to create resilience. Now, this isn't toxic positivity. This isn't being positive and ignoring any of the things that are going wrong. This isn't about gratitude and ignoring the challenges you might be facing, because there will be people, and maybe in this room, maybe that you know, maybe that you work with, who do have really big challenges in their lives. And what we're not saying is, oh, be grateful. Just be grateful and they'll all go away. That's absolutely not what we're saying. Anything like this has to go alongside support for the challenges that people might be facing. But if we can promote that, we do know that research suggests that people who practice gratitude tend to be more resilient, and people who are more resilient are more able to face challenges that come to them. And it strengthens social connections. If we're more likely to be practicing gratitude, if we are practicing that gratitude by sharing that gratitude with people around us, then it's going to strengthen those social bonds and encourages us to notice and value positive things in interactions and relationships. And how do we practice gratitude? Well, there are lots of different ways that we can practice gratitude. We can literally get to the end of the day, and I had a coach that did this with me for a long time. I was going through a really challenging time at work. It was a really difficult environment, and I was in charge of it. I wasn't creating it, I hope, but it was a difficult one. And the coach worked with me and said, at the end of every day, I want you to write down something that you have achieved today that you're grateful for. What are you grateful for? And getting into that practice of doing it every day, so you can end the day, you can start the day by simply talking out loud about 2-3 things that you are grateful for, and literally rewiring the brain. It might be that you practice gratitude by making a point of telling someone else every day something that you are grateful for, telling someone else something that you are grateful that they have done, because then you're sharing that as well, because receiving gratitude is also a really positive experience as well. So it could be linked in with journaling, it could be saying it out loud, it could be sharing it with someone, but really focusing on that positivity can help. So I want to go into the final section on here, thinking about how do we make this happen. Talked a lot about a lot of different things in this session, and what I really want to think about now is how can we make that happen, because it's not going to happen overnight and it can't all happen at once. I don't expect you to go away, start a mindfulness practice, getting in your flow and having a gratitude practice all at once. And what we're going to kind of end this session on is thinking about how we can make it a habit. And really, when we're talking about making something a habit, we need to focus on one thing that we're going to change, one thing that we think could make a difference. Not a huge difference, doesn't have to be a complete kind of change in your life, but one thing that might make a little difference. And that habit needs to be something that is realistic and achievable. So something that we can do. There's no point setting yourself the goal of half an hour meditation every day forever, because it's unlikely to happen. So we're going to make it realistic and we're going to make it achievable. And one of the key things that research suggests is that if we do it and we want to be successful, we need to attach it to something we already routinely do. And so we've got the 3 R's of making something a habit. We have the reminder, which is the cue or trigger that starts the habit. And what we can do there is find something that we always do anyway. Okay, so we're going to think about, maybe we decide that we are going to try 2 minutes of mindfulness a day. And we are going to do those 2 minutes of mindfulness whilst we're brushing our teeth. Okay. And, that is absolutely doable. We can do it while we're doing something as simple as brushing our teeth. Now, the reason we do that is because for most of us, we're going to brush our teeth every day. That is already part of our routine. It's already something that we do. So it's not adding something in completely from the mix. So we're going to brush our teeth every day. The routine is doing the mindfulness. So let's say the average time for brushing our teeth is 2 minutes. If you've got an electric toothbrush, you've even got a handy timer. Whilst brushing your teeth, you're going to try and just not think about anything other than the practice of brushing your teeth. We could say we're getting into the flow state of brushing our teeth, but I might be being a bit over the top there. So the routine is actually doing the thing, and the reward is the benefit you receive from that positive habit. So normally when you're brushing your teeth, you might be thinking about all the things you've got to do that day, your to-do list. It's, at the moment, it's getting all those things for Christmas, or the people that are coming to visit, the work that you've got to do before you finish for the year. Actually, what you're going to do is spend that 2 minutes just focusing on how it feels to brush your teeth. And just spend those 2 minutes. Any thought that comes into your mind, you're just going to let it float by. You're not going to hang on it. You're not going to think about it. You're just going to do those 2 minutes. And I will hazard a guess that after a few times, you will start to feel the benefit of it. In the same way that if you decide to walk mindfully home from work and focus on the things that you're doing that are around you, the five senses, you have to walk home from work anyway, because that's the way you get home. You're not adding anything on. You're just being mindful as you do it. And the reward might be that you will maybe feel much more relaxed. There's a big study of this in Berkeley University over in the States around mindful walking. There's some stuff on the internet if you're more interested in it, and the impact that it can have, because you're not spending that time worrying about all the different things that are happening in the world, in your life, at work, at home. You're just focusing on being mindful. And so thinking about what are the things that you are already doing where you can add this habit on. It could be just before bed. So maybe you always read a book before bed. Maybe at the end of reading the book, unless you're like me, and that's normally when you're about to go to sleep, maybe before you start reading your book, you'll spend 2 minutes just listening to a piece of music and just focusing on the music, just listening to the notes, not doing anything else. Or it might be it's that flow state, the colouring, for example. You really love colouring. So normally after dinner, you would sit down and put the television on. Instead of that, you're going to sit down, you're going to get the colouring books out, and you're going to sit and you're just going to colour for 5 minutes. And you're going to do that each night, part of your normal practice, and then you'll get the reward of feeling more relaxed. I know recently I've set up on my phone to turn off all social media at a particular time. And I have an app to do it for me because I don't have the willpower to do it myself. But it does make a huge difference to me feeling more present when that thing turns off my social media. And so, yes, we might need some support. We might need that reminder to help us to do it. And there's no shame in that. That is absolutely fine, whatever works for us. But these habits then build up. And as we feel those rewards, we're more likely to do them. I mean, these habits, this is how bad habits come as well. So, I used to be a smoker. And so after every meal, I would have a cigarette. It was my reminder with the meal finishing, the routine was having a cigarette, the reward was the nicotine hit. It can happen both ways, but if we try and turn it on its head, it can have a positive impact on what we are doing and how we are living our lives. So what I would say as we come towards the end of the session is, don't go away feeling like you have to do everything that we've talked about today. One tiny change can make the difference. 2 minutes a day, every day, being more mindful, putting your phone away and listening to a piece of music, whatever it is that works for you, doing that each day and then building it up when you feel confident. So I think they talk about, building these habits, small habits over several days, several weeks, even several months, and then adding to that habit, either making it longer the time that you are doing the meditation. And if it's not working for you, try something else. If your habit isn't sticking, it might just be that it's not the habit for you, and you might need to explore a different option. So thinking about that reminder, routine, reward. So what's the reminder? What's the thing that's going to remind you to do this new habit? Do the new habit, that's the routine, and then explore what the reward is and notice what the difference is and how you feel when you complete this routine. So what have we focused on today? We've talked about what is noticing, understanding that noticing is about not bringing judgment. It's about being in the present moment. It's about being able to focus on the here and the now. And you might do that through mindfulness. There are lots of different ways that you can explore mindfulness. I gave some examples earlier. You can just put on a piece of nice, relaxing music, just sit with your eyes closed and just don't think about anything. Because whenever people used to say to me about mindfulness, just stop thinking, I didn't understand it. And it's not about not thinking, it's about not dwelling on those thoughts. So if you are sitting there quietly and what's for dinner comes up, just let that float by. Don't engage in it. Just let that float by. That's why something like Headspace is a really good app, because we talk you through it and that can be really helpful. Attention and where to place it. So, we do live in a time where our attention is often split in so many different ways, especially if we are working busy jobs, if we're parents, if we have our own parents who we're looking after, we've got lots of attention going everywhere. And sometimes it's about focusing where that attention is and allowing ourselves to do that. And then finding your flow. Hopefully, during this session, you've had a chance to think about what an activity might be for you that is finding your flow, and you will try and do that more regularly. Allow yourself to do that. Don't see it as being lazy or not being productive. It's allowing yourself to find your flow. Then we've got the gratitude practice. So thinking about how can you do that, and that might be the habit that you build. So you might just do, after you brush your teeth every night, write down one thing you're grateful for and do that every day and see what the benefits are. And thinking about how you build those habits, how you think about how you build that into your life already. So no one is expecting you to go away and just do all these things straight away. It's about taking one tiny bit, adding it into your routine and building those habits up once you see the benefits of them. So that is the end of the session. I just want to talk a little bit about what YMCA has to offer more widely. We offer lots of different training and clinical services. So depending on the organisation you might work for, there are lots of different things that you can access. The website is the best place to go to find out about that. Obviously, you found this one, so you know where to look. There's further training if you are in schools that you can access through the Skills Network at level 2. Anything from understanding autism to the principles of working with individuals with learning disabilities, lots of different things on there that you can access as well. Really grateful for you being here and listening today. If you do have any questions or want to contact us, then you can do so using this information. So we've got our email, mentalhealthtraining@ymcatrinity.org.uk. You can go to our website or you can give us a call on that number. I just have one request really, which is to ask you to complete this survey. So if you are able to scan the QR code, I'm just going to find the link for you. If you are able to scan the QR code, then that would be amazing. I'm just going to try and stop sharing so that you can. I'm going to bring the QR code back up in a minute. I'm just going to stop sharing so I can get the link and put it in the chat for you. 1 second, where technology fails me. Here we go. 1 moment, any minute now. Here we go. So I'm just going to put the link in the chat. And then I will also bring the QR code back up. If you would be able to take a minute or so to complete that, it's really important for us to be able to know that the training we are offering is useful. If there's anything we can do to improve it, then we only know that by the participants sharing that with us. So I'm just going to put the QR code back up again. If you do want to scan that QR code to complete that feedback form, that would be really helpful. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to find that. Hopefully you've either been able to click on the link or to scan the QR code. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you do have any questions following the session today. It's 3 minutes to 2. We have just come to the end. So thank you so much for attending this afternoon session. I really hope that it was useful for you, particularly as we go through this busy Christmas period, where sometimes taking some time to notice or to find our flow might be just what we need to get through the challenges that we might be facing. So thank you all. That's the end of this afternoon session.